Today we're talking about help for Charlotte homeowners, public transportation, and what's up with the weather. I'm Carlton Hargrove, and this is 282. Joining us for another episode of 282. It's another exciting episode. Once again, we've got a great discussion coming your way. We've gathered another great panel of guests, as always. And today, actually, we have an addition to the show. We have a group from Communities in Schools. Say what's up, everybody. That's really loud. So when you hear like thunderous applause, which will happen throughout the show, that's why. You know, it's not the normal quiet bunch. We've also got my main man, Jarvis Holiday, over in what I'm calling the Crow's Nest today.
Crow's Nest?
The Crow's Nest.
I was looking forward to each week you've been giving me a new name.
Well, that's right, it's crows. It was owls last week.
Okay, crow. Okay, as long as I don't eat crow. All right. Can the community schools people sit behind me where to be like the dog pound? Remember Arsenio Hall? Yeah. But you guys can follow the show on Twitter at 282TV. Tweet us your comments using hashtag 282TV, and we're incorporated in the show.
Thank you, Jarvis. Thank you very much. Okay, let's get to the guests. We've got a great trio here today. On the end, we have Rebecca Maddich, who is a mortgage banker at Cunningham & Company. All right. Next up, we've got Sean Flynn from News 14. He's the managing editor of News 14, 24-hour news.
Thank you.
We've also got Brad Panovich, who is the chief meteorologist for WCNC.
Yes, thanks for having me.
And you're here to talk about the weather, I'm thinking.
Yeah, everyone wants to talk about that. I thought he was talking mortgages.
Well, you know,
we can go there,
you
too.
will talk about everything. All right, well, first, let's get into the conversation. Let's start it with the whole mortgage crisis. Of course, you know, this big mortgage settlement was announced a few weeks ago. It's $26 billion going all over the country. North Carolina's getting
$338 million.
That's like what's in my bank account right now.
Absolutely.
Minus the same amount.
It's nice of you to chip in.
Yeah. So the big question, though, is how is this going to affect North Carolina homeowners, and especially Charlotte homeowners? How will this money impact? Who is it going to go to? Sure. So first of all, how will it affect people here?
How it will affect is some of the funds will go to pay people who were victims of foreclosure fraud, whether it was robo-signing or mortgage servicer couldn't prove that they actually own the mortgage.
We'll break down robo-signing first.
What robo-signing was is that when paperwork came through a servicer for a mortgage that hadn't received payments, instead of going through the correct process of those foreclosure documents being signed in the presence of a notary, they basically just hired warm bodies to go through, sign the paperwork. They weren't actually.
It wasn't robots signing it.
No, it was the robo part
like
meant
that.
just that they were sort of mechanically signing them, not verifying the information.
Okay.
And that is what kicked off basically the investigations that then resulted in the settlement of servicing and foreclosure mistakes, mishandling.
Okay. So this, from what I've read, this will actually help people who have been thrown out of their homes or have, you know, whose homes have been foreclosed, and people who are underwater in their mortgages.
That's correct. So the money hasn't gotten as granular as far as people aren't getting letters yet saying yes, you're eligible for these funds, but it will go to help victims of the foreclosure fraud of robo-signing, like I said, also to assist people who are maybe on time with their mortgage payments but are underwater, so they can't refinance through the traditional ways. And then the money will also go to bolster anti-foreclosure programs, homebuyer counseling programs, like North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So again, those are sort of where those have been designated, but again, those funds haven't yet been made available to the individuals or to the companies.
So when can people expect?
The timeline is given anywhere from the next 3 to 6 months, because in the next about 30 days, an administrator for the settlement is expected to be selected.
Okay.
And then in the next 6 to 9 months, those payments are actually supposed to be going out. So homeowners, previous homeowners can contact their mortgage servicer. So that would be like a Bank of America, Wells Fargo, et cetera, to see if they'd be eligible.
Okay.
Certainly want to drop in to make sure that there are already fraud and, fraud people trying to fraudulently make you believe that you're already eligible to give, sensitive information, et cetera.
So if you get a call from Brad, that's probably not.
Right. We can talk about the weather all day long, but I'm not giving him my bank account.
Well, one thing I want to ask you, and I want to also ask Sean, is, you were basically on the front lines of a lot of this upheaval that was going on in the housing industry, and you reported on it, I'm assuming. So I kind of want to know from you guys, how have people been responding to the news that help is on the way? Is it a positive reaction, or are
It
people
is.
cynical about it?
I don't think people are necessarily cynical. I think it's just because the details aren't out to know whether it affects them. It's sort of the knowledge that there's help out there somewhere.
Okay.
But I don't know if it will help me.
Right.
And again, haven't necessarily been able to get down into the details of all that because it's just not available. It's so new.
Yeah. Sean, what about you?
I would just say we've been reporting on this for 4 or 5 years now. People talking about, we've heard mortgage modification and all these things about people trying to get help and not getting help. And for the most part, a lot of people have already been have their homes taken away from them.
Right.
So at this point, they're not getting their homes back. They might get a small check, so it might be some small comfort in helping them rebound from wherever they've landed. I think a lot of people who are kind of in that underwater situation, I've heard as recently as 1 out of every 4 homeowners is currently their value is underwater. They're underwater on their homes. So I don't know if even this amount of money is going to do all that much to help them. And then you also have the issue of, is it fair?
Right.
Because, for people who have 50, 60% of or own their home outright, they're not benefiting at all from this. And, it's a tough issue to grasp because it's just so mammoth.
Right.
And
well, one thing I'm wondering too, and I want to ask you, what do you feel like will be the political implications of locally of this foreclosure settlement? Will this help some people that maybe were behind it, or is this going to come back to kind of bite them later on?
Wait, are you talking?
I'm talking about the foreclosure settlement. I mean, the fact that there are a lot of people, especially on the GOP side of things, that are very much against this idea. And I kind of wonder, will this hurt folks?
Well, it's proven time and time again. Anytime you can make the big corporations look bad, among the common people, you look good. But
although you kind of wonder now, it's like so many people. There's a group of people that are getting behind corporations and saying corporations are people and things like that. Do we feel like these politicians are going to feel some kind of negative impact as a result?
I think it basically goes down to the typical camps that you see.
Right.
A lot of the Democrats who, went on to the Senate floor and started, especially, I've never in my life or in my political history lessons ever heard of a senator actually calling out an American company on the U.S. Senate floor, like happened to Bank of America.
Right.
And of course, that was a Democratic senator who did that. So you're going to find people taking lines, and then you'll see probably a lot more of the Republicans talking about not necessarily helping corporations, but they like to not see as much government intervention.
Right.
A lot of the typical things that we come down on. So I think you're going to see it come down on typical party lines.
Let me get you in the conversation. I don't know what your perspective is as a homeowner or as a journalist.
Well, I think Sean brings up a good point here. Is that what about the people that aren't underwater? And I think there's bailout fatigue among most Americans.
Right.
Why are we still bailing people out after making mistakes? And it's not even the homeowner. I think in some ways you're bailing out the companies who lost money on it. So you obviously want to help the individual, but as a homeowner who is in an okay situation, I also would like to see my neighbors who are underwater foreclosure issues to have them propped up because they're bringing down my property values.
True.
So in many ways, even this would benefit me, even though I'm not underwater. I have some foreclosures in my neighborhood I would love to see off the market,
Right.
To help bring up the neighborhood values.
Yeah. Now, ultimately, will this have any effect on home sales for existing homes or for new homes or anything?
Part of it is also just changing the servicing practices as far as, some foreclosures aren't going to be able to come to market as quickly as possible because, again, they're more stringent as far as step 1, step 2, step 3. So I think that will lengthen out the time that it takes for these foreclosed properties to come on the market, which always, puts downward pressure on the market.
Here's a big question for you. Is robo-signing still taking place?
I'd be hard-pressed to believe that it is. I think that it got so much attention. It was shown that it was a really gross oversight.
Right.
I do think that, the companies, if not for how they're mandated to in the settlement to have enough staffing so they aren't attempted to robo-sign, I think that they really moved away from that, again, because that was very, very bad kind of headline liability for those companies.
Okay.
You know, if you kind of flip around what she was just talking about, by lengthening out when these foreclosures finally hit the market, some are arguing that you're actually lengthening until the time till we actually see a rebound.
Right.
Because, I mean, neighborhood after neighborhoods are like, all right, I got another foreclosure I'm competing against. I can't sell my home, or I'm going to have to sell it at another loss.
Sure.
You know, it's, you know, some argue, let's just get them all out there, get it done, and move on with the whole thing.
And I think that's the argument a lot of people have made since the beginning. If we would have just got these foreclosures and these losses off the books way at the beginning, we might be in a better. We've extended and kind of made the pain go on forever instead of pulling the Band-Aid off quickly. It's been a slow, steady burn, which has just extended the recession probably overall.
Yeah. I think we've got something from Jarvis. Jarvis, what you got, man?
Yeah, we have a comment from a tweet from one of our Twitter followers at Orange Chuck. He says he believes the settlement will be fair if it benefits people who lost their homes unfairly, but not those who benefited and had didn't have legit issues. So it'll be a waste. And one question, Carlson, I'd like you to ask the panel is if they could explain how come for our viewers, south of the line, our Fort Mill, Rock Hill viewers, how come North Carolina is essentially getting twice as much money as South Carolina in the settlement?
Rebecca, what do you think about that?
As far as why North Carolina is getting more than South Carolina, I think that it was basically how the different state attorneys general both advocated for their state of what the losses were, probably by having some of the banks based here that increased our state losses, because it's not just individual homeowners, it is statewide as far as different counties, tax revenue lost, sort of all that went into the calculation of who got what.
Right.
I think it's also just sheer number.
Okay.
I think there were a lot
as far
more
as sheer number of homeowners or foreclosures?
homeowners and foreclosures in North Carolina. So, the larger states, California's and Texas are getting.
Yeah, California's getting like most of it, right? Like $16, $17 billion or something like that.
They're getting a very large cut.
It's pretty bad in California. Anyway, all right. Well, we can talk for days about this subject, but we will switch gears and we're going to talk about public transportation. And, we've talked about public transportation several times on this show. Recently, Obama's latest budget, he proposed actually giving the Charlotte Light Rail project like $70 million. And I guess it could be more once the full, thing comes out. But kind of want to know, even with that money being kind of tossed or thrown out there, do we really have the will to expand light rail? Do we have the will to pay for it? I mean, I just kind of feel like so many people just seem to be against it from the beginning, even till now. And I wonder, what do you think? What are the chances that we're actually going to expand?
Well, a couple of weeks ago when the president unveiled his budget, and just a couple of days later he had all of his secretaries talk about why it's good. They had the Secretary of Transportation come out and say $70 million was going to be in this year's budget to expand the light rail line out to to the University of Northeastern Charlotte. Now, what was key in that is we asked follow-up questions, and the Federal Transit Administrator said, he sees this as all but a go. They still have a little bit more due diligence, but they fully anticipate signing the full funding grant agreement this fall that will say the feds are on for 50% of those costs.
Okay.
So you have the state saying they'll pay for 25%, and then the rest comes from the half-cent sales tax.
Okay.
So at this point, I don't think there is any way, and this is pun completely intended, that we will derail the light rail extension. I'm a professional. So again, I don't see any way that could be derailed.
Right.
As far as the red line, the commuter line, at this point, I don't see that going forward at all.
That was like the high-speed thing?
That's not the high speed. That's just the commuter line up to Mooresville, Iredell County. Yeah, in the last month, you've had the Iredell County Board of Commissioners say they don't want to be on board. You had somebody from the Cato Institute come out here and say the math is bad, that you cannot fund it and it's bad. Now, granted, that's a conservative think tank group, but it is what it is. Yeah. You've had the feds come online and say they're not going to support it financially. And then just last week, you had Norfolk Southern, who owns the rail line, saying, as the plan is currently drawn up, they're not on board. Okay. And they own the line. So,
that's not good.
that line I don't see happening.
Right.
Of course, you have the streetcar, the 1.5 miles that's going to be built sometime in the next couple of years. Whether that makes it out to Eastland Mall, there's going to be a lot of that. That's where the discussion is going to be lying.
Right.
But that's kind of the update on all three of those. And then the high-speed rail line, that's moving forward.
Well, one question I want to kind of ask you though is, so with the proposed money and everything's kind of proceeding as it's going to proceed, what date are we looking to have this thing be moving?
Well, with the light rail extension, they're talking the next 5 years.
Oh,
You'll
next
be
5
riding
years.
it.
Okay, we'll be able to get on it.
Okay. They were talking potentially shovels in the ground next year and riding by 2017 at the earliest, probably more likely 2018, 2019.
Well, I kind of worry though about, like the Iredell County projects and stuff like that. Because one thing I noticed, I moved here from Atlanta, and people complain about the public transportation in Atlanta, or transportation in general. But one of the big problems is none of the outlying counties wanted to invest in, connecting to MARTA. So that's why you have that terrible traffic that takes so long to get to the city. Mm-hmm. I mean, I kind of see the same thing happening here. Obviously, there's some issues with the Iredell County thing, but I just kind of wonder, is there a group that's just against public transportation, period?
Well, there's a lot of groups that are against rail because rail is expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the streetcar, the 1.5 miles that they're going to build, you could actually almost buy a car for every single person who's going to be riding it.
Let's do it.
I'll take.
What kind of car?
But so it is expensive,
right.
And a lot of times it just doesn't financially make sense. Like we're starting to see, at least the way it's drawn up right now for that red line. So there's a lot of hesitation that you could possibly expand highways. You could create some more high occupancy toll lanes. There's a lot of other options. You can just use bus.
Right.
I don't know why people are so against the bus.
Because it's terrible.
Well,
sorry, cats.
What is the difference between a bus and a streetcar?
Let me tell you
Other
the difference.
than it's on a line.
Let me tell you the difference. Well, no, with streetcar, not so much difference. But I think with a bus, as compared to a train, there's a big difference because you have way more stops, and then you have a lot more mechanical issues with the bus. I mean, those buses break down a lot, and it seems like they're quicker to cut. They're going to cut the bus lines before they'll cut a route, but you can't cut. You're going this way, right? One thing I want to ask you is about like the environmental effects. Okay, we can buy a car for everybody.
Sure.
We can build more roads, but what is that going to do to the environment?
Well, we're in a catch-22 in the Charlotte area. We have high ozone issues
Right.
every summer, and it's partly because of the growth, but it's also partly because of our weather here. I mean, we're trapped between the mountains and the coast. We get persistent high pressure. We could have great air quality, but over time it would get stagnant, and there would be issues. And with the federal government, we run into issues with, not meeting qualifications. But the problem is our road system, 45 is not done. We've got a lot of road issues, which causes...
It's still not done? I thought it was...
Well, I mean, 45, think about this. It took, 2 years to build Bank of America Stadium, 4 years to build Duke Power.
Yes.
It's 26 years and counting for 485. The Great Pyramids of Egypt were built quicker than that. So you ask yourself, why is it taking so long? And the congestion in traffic, actually idling in your car causes more ozone than driving at highway speed.
Oh, wow.
So we need the money to get the congestion out of here, but they won't give us the money because the air quality is bad. So we're like in this catch-22 where we need the money to get the cars out of this congestion to get the ozone better, but until the ozone gets better, we don't get the money for the roads.
Right.
So you run into this issue, and our air quality has improved dramatically. It really has.
Yeah? Okay.
And part of it has been because cars are just more efficient.
Okay.
They run better. And if we get favorable weather. And here's the thing we would never forget. We had a bad air quality summer last year because we had stagnant high pressure. We could have coal-burning power plants all over Charlotte, but if we have rainy, cool weather in the summer, our air quality will falsely look good.
Okay.
So it's kind of that catch-22 with the weather and the cars. It's not always that the cars are causing the problem. Sometimes the weather is actually impacting the environment. So it'd be great to get these cars off the road, but the main thing is get them moving.
Right.
We don't want them sitting in traffic. That's the worst thing you could do for ozone.
Rebecca, what are your thoughts? I don't know how you get around town. You take the bus, train,
drive. I'm unfortunately
bike.
probably one. I wish.
Big
Unfortunately,
SUV.
I'm probably one of the idling cars on Providence Road. But
So why don't you take public transportation?
it doesn't. I would have to take my car anyway to get to a bus stop. So it's not. The walkability of my neighborhood is not there.
What neighborhood do you live in?
I live near
What's your
Providence
actual
Plantation.
address? No, I'm just kidding. You live near where?
I live near Providence Plantation.
Okay.
So South Charlotte.
I know, well, you know, there are lots of people I know in Charlotte who've given up their cars, and now they only get around on bikes and trains and things like that. How feasible is that for most people?
Well, for some people, well, that's the way we're kind of building the communities right now. We're
Okay.
all into this transit-oriented development where you can work, live, and play all at the same place, and you don't have to, or you can hop on the rail or hop on a bus. The biggest driving factor to getting people onto mass transit is just go to the gas station right now.
Oh, yes.
Once we hit $4, you're going to see ridership. CAT's ridership's already increased.
Right.
Once you hit $4, it's going to increase dramatically. And God forbid if it hits $5 this year, it's going to be through the roof. I mean, which is great for CATs,
Right.
but bad for me.
I think we got Jarvis. You got a comment?
Yes. We asked on Twitter if our followers thought they'll ever see construction of extension of the light rail from Uptown to UNCC. And at Lisa Catherine says, I hope so. Light rail is great for Charlotte. Also, we have a comment from a fan on Facebook. Yeah, you can become a fan of the show on Facebook.com/282TV. Duvane Dorsey says he thinks it'll happen. There are a few hurdles with surrounding counties, but after the traffic accident that shut down 77 last week, he think that was an eye-opener to everyone to get done. So I think that's a good comment. People see snarl traffic on the interstate. It's hopefully propel them to get the light rail done.
That's cool. All right, well, we're going to switch gears, and we're going to actually move to the final topic now, which is the weather. And, you know, when we had a meeting about this earlier last week, you know, we want to talk about the weather. And we had a producer or a director who was like, I don't want to talk about the weather. But, I mean, we've had unseasonably warm temperatures, and I'm from Gary, Indiana.
Yeah.
And so I don't mind not having any snow, but some people, you know, are kind of worried about that.
It is funny when you start talking about cold weather in Charlotte. There's two camps. There's the people that hate it, or there's people that love it. And just among the people that follow me on Facebook and Twitter, there's a huge contingent of snow lovers in this town. And it's the weirdest.
I want to kill them.
It's the weirdest dichotomy, and I think it has to do with our population is a whole bunch of transplants from up north who miss the winters up north, and a whole bunch of transplants from Florida or further south who've never seen snow.
Right.
You put those two together and a little bit of snow, you get craziness. You
Right.
get run on bread and milk. That's what you get. You get the bread and milk. But the interesting about this winter is, and this is a stat that it always blows people away. Now, we don't get a lot of snow in Charlotte. Only about 4.7 inches is the 30-year average. But in 134 years of history, we've always had at least a trace. We've never had zero snow in Charlotte.
Okay.
So to me, the warm temperatures were one thing. The fact that we hadn't gotten snow until last Sunday,
Right.
which I know many of you didn't see
That
it.
was snow, yeah.
Just a trace at the airport. That keeps the string 134 years straight of at least a trace of snow here. So while we don't get a lot of snow, we always get a little. And, you know, it's our geography. The mountains help. And getting cold air trapped against the mountains, we always get either sleet, ice, or snow every winter, even if it's just a tiny bit.
Brad, I think you just jinxed it. I'm going to be standing on an ice this week.
Well, and that's the thing. You got to watch early March. The first 2 weeks of March, we had some of our biggest storms.
14 inches, 2004.
Yeah.
Oh.
Man.
And I remember last week we set a record high. I think it was Tuesday, 76 degrees. All right. That was the record high set back in 1980. That same year, in 1980, March 1st and 2nd, 1.5 feet of snow fell almost across the entire state of North Carolina. So it can happen even after a quick warm-up like this.
Well, from a meteorological, I said the word wrong, but meteorological standpoint, why don't we have any snow?
Well, part of the reason is La Nina. Now, La Nina is just a cooling of the water in the
my
eastern
ex-wife.
Pacific. And La Nina, she can do some crazy things as well.
No, what did La Nina do this time?
Well, usually what La Nina does, it shifts the jet stream north and basically keeps all the cold air bottled up north. Now, last year we had La Nina as well, but there was another phenomenon, something in the Pacific we call the North Atlantic Oscillation. It's just a fancy name for a big blocking pattern. What happens is the cold air can't go east, so it gets forced down the east coast, and we had a really brutal winter last year. This year we didn't have that. We had the complete opposite. We had a very positive NAO, which made Alaska have the coldest winter on record, made Europe and Eastern Europe get clobbered. So it wasn't like there wasn't cold air. It was just all concentrated in one area. And
Okay.
the thing about Mother Nature, if it's really cold somewhere else, it's really warm somewhere else too.
Okay.
So it kind of ebbs and flows. And you know, if you're cold here, it's really warm somewhere else. And that's basically what happened this winter. We just have not had the cold air intrusions from Canada. It's all been
Right.
bottled up north.
Okay. Rebecca, now, are you originally from the South?
No, I'm a Charlotte native.
Oh,
they actually
wow.
do
Oh,
bring
you
them
are?
here.
Okay.
Really?
So you are.
Yes.
I met one. All right.
Now, what
Take a picture. You caught one in the wild.
are you one of those people that like to see snow and get mad when you don't see it and want to go?
I don't
sledding
get
and
mad. I
stuff?
mean, it's nice. It's fun. I like Charlotte's version of snow because you get it for a day, maybe two.
Right.
But by day 2, it starts to look like The Shining in my house. So I couldn't do really heavy snows.
And does the bad weather, and this is kind of a strange question, but does the bad weather affect like home sales and stuff like that?
Well, we're starting to see a lot of purchase activity early in the year. I mean, for January and February, it's been pretty strong purchase market. So we keep joking that since spring has sprung early, it has in the housing market as well. But I think if the weather's nice, it's 76, you want to get out, you might want to go look at some homes.
Yeah.
Right.
You might want to buy one. So I think it definitely helps because it gets people outdoors.
I mean, the weather is a big attraction for so many people transplanting from other parts of the country.
Right.
We always joke at our station because there's so many people from Ohio. And I always tell people, we used to go to Myrtle Beach every summer. You drive through Charlotte, it's beautiful weather. Why not move down here? Not only the jobs getting moved down here, but the weather's great. And then I've seen a big influx since I've been here 10 years of people from Florida moving back to the Carolinas because they wanted to escape hurricanes.
Oh, okay.
They wanted to get out of Florida because, especially after 2005, when there 7 major hurricanes hit the state, you had a bunch of people who said, you know what, I'm done with the hurricanes.
Yeah.
I don't want to move way back north, but I want to move halfway, the half-backers. They come back to Charlotte, which, we have a great climate here. I've lived in many parts of the country. Very few places have exactly 3 months of every season. I
Right.
mean, we have 4 seasons. It's a great climate.
Yeah, up where I'm from, we have 2 seasons. We have winter and summer for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So
I hear ya.
I don't miss it. I don't miss it at all. But we're going to go through the lightning round really, really quickly, and just tell me what was the most underreported story of last week.
Last week,
You got like a
well,
second.
it wasn't Jeremy Lin, I can tell you that. Gosh, that's a good one. I think last week the most underreported thing was probably the early start of spring. I mean, I
Early
think
start of spring.
in
Okay.
the pollen season really kicking off. I think that's the one thing.
Sean.
Come Wednesday, Charlotte Bobcats will have not lost a game in a week.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They
That is
didn't
a big
play the
story.
entire week.
Rebecca.
I'd say probably home inventory that homes are selling.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Well, that's it for this week, guys. Thanks a lot for joining us. Had a good time. Thank you, Jarvis from the Crow's Nest. And thank you, folks at home, for watching the show. Thanks to you guys. Say goodbye. All right. We need to keep you here every week. All right. Come back next week. Check us out on 282.